Our theme this week is Here We Are, and we won't lie, that theme was somewhat inspired by the title of our next guest's latest book, which is Here I Am. And by somewhat inspired, I mean that's why we picked this week's theme. Jonathan Safran Foer's first book, Everything is Illuminated, won roughly 1 million literary awards, was adapted into a film, and got him a ton of notice. His follow-ups, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, and Eating Animals, made it clear that he was here to stay as an important literary figure. He's 1 year younger than I am, but I'm not letting that get to me. Please welcome Jonathan Safran Foer to Livewire. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for coming down here to WNYC to be a part of this. Can you lay out some of the characters in your new book and what they're going through in Here I Am?
So it all takes place in D.C., where I grew up, and big D.C. contingent tonight, I guess. It follows one family, the Block family, mostly the husband and wife, Jacob and Julia, who are in their early 40s. Jacob was an aspiring writer. It's not really clear what kind, but he ended up working for a TV show that's enormously popular that he doesn't really care very much about. His wife, Julia, is an architect, and she had ambitions of making museums and war memorials, and now she does kitchen and bathroom renovations. They have 3 children, 13, 10, and 6, a father, a grandfather, multiple generations. And the book kind of follows this family through 2 crises, one of which is a discovered cell phone, which has evidence of an affair, pretty explicit evidence of an affair, and an earthquake in the Middle East, which precipitates a war that becomes so extreme that the Prime Minister of Israel asks all Jews between the ages of 15 and 55 to come back to fight. I say come back, to go.
Would you do that if you were asked?
With the affair or the war?
You're free to answer that either way. I was thinking of reporting for duty to Israel.
I think in both cases, it's one of those things you can't really answer until it's about to happen. Actually, the first reading that I did from the book in New York was in Brooklyn, and it was it's funny, I say D.C. and everybody claps. I say Brooklyn, there's dead silence.
Well, we're in Manhattan now. There's maybe a certain grudge.
Nobody here lives in Manhattan. I would almost bet on it. But
so they're self-hating Brooklynites.
Yeah. So the first reading I did was in Brooklyn at a synagogue. So both because it was Brooklyn and because it was in a synagogue, there were an awful lot of Jewish people there. And the interviewer asked the audience the question you just asked me. And some people raised their hands. Yes, I would go fight. Some people kept their hands down. Most people just looked around to see what everybody else was doing. And then the interviewer asked me what I thought of the response. And I said, I don't really think anything about it, because this is one of those things where the way that we have identified ourselves, either because it's how we want to think of ourselves or how we want to be thought of by other people, has maybe nothing to do with who we actually are and how we'd actually behave when called upon. And so I wanted this book to create situations where people were called upon to claim one identity at the expense of another.
Yeah, this book really deals with the question of Jewish identity. When you set out to write the book, was that a primary thought in your mind? Like you wanted to write about that topic?
Truth be told, I don't really have primary thoughts in my mind when I write, or even secondary or tertiary thoughts. I write with a kind of openness. You know, I've written, I think, 3 or 4 book proposals and sold them to publishers. And only once have I turned in the book that I wrote the proposal for, which was a nonfiction book. When I finished this book and I handed it to some friends, to my brothers, to my editor, a couple people said to me, man, there's a lot of Jewish stuff in this book. And I was really surprised, really, really surprised. I have 2 boys, and we play a lot of word games, trivia games. And the other morning we were down at breakfast, and I asked my younger son if he could name 5 kinds of dinosaur. And he said, oh, yeah, no problem, definitely. You got your Tyrannosaurus Rex, your T-Rex, your Rex, your Tyrannosaurus. And I explained to him that wasn't quite right. And then he said to me, did you ask me that question because there was a dinosaur on the back of my T-shirt, which I hadn't seen that morning. And I told him what I would tell you, which is no. But the truth is, I must have seen it at some point. And a lot of my writing is sort of inspired by those like backs of T-shirts, the things that aren't really in the straight field of vision. They're not things that I'm consciously thinking about, but are around me. And then it's only through the process of writing that I see, oh, wow, I had thought I was one kind of person, observing one kind of thing, living one kind of life. And now I have evidence that something else was going on.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what the proposal was for this book?
For this book? God, can I remember what it was?
It was about dinosaurs. Here, let me fix your mic for you, Jonathan. This is annoying everybody involved. Here you go.
Except me, I was perfectly comfortable.
Oh, really? Okay, by everyone I mean me. Let me ask that again because I was being so hilarious it threw the crowd off. Do you remember if often the proposal that you write what the final product is changes? Do you remember what the proposal for your newest book, Here I Am, was?
I think it was a proposal for a book that I still might write about called Escape from Children's Hospital, about something that happened to me when I was young, when I was 9 in D.C. Go D.C.
Cue
go
DC-related clapping.
And an event that happened in summer school, this strange sort of traumatic event that ended up influencing my life and a number of people's lives. And if I say any more, I'll spoil the suspense.
All right. Well, then don't do that. We do also have to take a quick break. We have Jonathan Safran Foer here. His new book is Here I Am. This is Livewire Radio coming to you from New York City. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Livewire Radio, coming to you this week from the Greene Space at WNYC in New York. My name is Luke Burbank. We've got Josh. We've got John. I was just talking to you in the break about your brother, Josh. We've got Jonathan Safran Foer here. His new book is Here I Am. The family that is the sort of main focus of this book, the Block family. The kid Sam is getting ready for a bar mitzvah, which he's somewhat ambivalent about. Did you have a bar mitzvah?
I did. But, I can't stop thinking about your introduction, and I can't remember if you said you were a year older than me or a year younger than me.
I'm a year older than you.
When you look at me, do I look a year younger than you?
You look 11 years younger than me.
It's funny because I was thinking you looked 11 years older than me. Okay, my own bar mitzvah.
Thank God this is radio.
My own bar mitzvah.
They can't see me kicking your ass.
My still fit ass. All right, my bar mitzvah, back to real things.
I'm just wondering, if like you felt at all leading up to your bar mitzvah the way that the character in the book feels.
I did. I mean, I felt a lot of ambivalence. I felt that I saw hypocrisy wherever I looked and inconsistency. I didn't understand why I was being asked to do the things I was being asked to do, but I don't know if that really distinguishes me from other 13-year-olds, or if it's in any way a uniquely Jewish experience. I think there are things about the rite of passage and all the emphasis that's put on it and the pressure that's put on it that can stimulate a kind of questioning and a kind of maybe even resentment. But ultimately, it was a kind of transformative experience. It was one of those things that was as resisted, but as promised.
Did you have a wild party afterwards with a DJ and music?
I can't remember it, so let that be evidence of... No, I had a very tame party. I had a band called the Electric Brigade. They were a bunch of military servicemen, actually, who were like... This is how they made money on the side, I guess. And we had a tent in my backyard, and that's pretty much all I can remember. My passage, the parsha that week, was the 10 Commandments. So I did the 10 Commandments, which is a big one. We had the Electric Brigade, which was a big one. And did you
have any requests for the Electric Brigade?
In fact, I did. They gave a list of 300 songs that they could play. And it was all stuff that at the time seemed deep and important, and in retrospect was kind of silly. But Milli Vanilli, I happen to remember they played a lot of Milli Vanilli. Yeah.
They might have been Milli Vanilli,
right.
or the people who originally did the music. I mean, we
right.
just can't know.
That's true.
We have Jonathan Safran Foer here. His new book is Here I Am. How much of this book is for you autobiographical, and do you ever get through an interview where someone doesn't ask you that question?
I thought I was just about to.
We'll edit this out later, don't worry.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like asking how much of this show is autobiographical. In some sense, it must be strongly. Like, you presumably want to talk to certain people. You arrange it in a certain way. It's an expression of your concerns and the way you like things to be. And in that sense, the book was strongly autobiographical and more autobiographical than my other books, maybe just because I've been writing longer and I have a better sense of what it is that I like. In the sense of the events in the book corresponding to events in my life, it's not any more than my other books were.
I heard you say that you weren't like a real avid reader as a kid. You kind of got to that a little bit late. What changed for you, and also what was an early book that you got really jazzed about?
I don't know exactly what changed for me. One of my favorite quotes about writing was James Baldwin said, "I used to think the things I felt most strongly most alienated me from other people because nobody would be depressed like I'm depressed or happy like I'm happy." And I became an avid reader when I was about maybe, I don't know, a junior in high school, something like that. And that's a time when one feels a lot of like depression and happiness, really extreme emotional swings. And James Baldwin then said, I felt that way until I became a reader and writer, and I realized the things I felt most strongly connected me to others, just not the others that I had assumed. And that was my experience. I felt, as a lot of young people do, a certain amount of alienation or aloneness or just distance from the world, not knowing where my puzzle piece fit into the rest. And books gave a sense of kind of camaraderie. And in terms of early books I read that meant a lot to me, putting aside the things I found behind other books in my parents' attic, like The Joy of Sex and Our Bodies, Ourselves. God, I studied that like it was Talmud. Yeah. But
that was probably back in the day when that was still pretty exciting stuff. You couldn't just go on your phone.
No. It is still exciting stuff. Have you looked at The Joy of Sex recently?
Not in the last
30 minutes.
7 hours.
Yeah. Do you remember it at all?
I remember it vividly because I don't think I'd ever seen that stuff going on. And granted, it's hand drawn.
Well, that is what makes it so unbelievably, mind-blowingly exciting. In a way, it's the exact. I know this isn't what was brought on to talk about, but
what you wouldn't believe, Jonathan, is that's exactly. This whole page is just Joy of Sex analysis.
It's the only thing that I'm the world expert on, and I don't mean sex, but I mean the book, The Joy of Sex.
Okay.
It is like the exact antithesis of contemporary pornography, because it's like maybe there's an analogy in Peanuts, the Charles Schulz cartoon. The faces are drawn so minimally, just enough to suggest a human face and a specific character, that you can then like invest in it whatever you want to, and you can also invest yourself in it. And such is The Joy of Sex. Like, those drawings gave me, and probably you, just enough material to go absolutely spastic mentally.
Well, speaking of hit books, as I was on my way out here, Jonathan, I was passing through a number of different airports, and every bookstore I walked by, there was your new book, Here I Am, prominently displayed. And I wondered what that feels like for you to see that, and if you ever given the urge to just like nudge one of the Hudson Books employees and go like, "That's me."
Well, I'll tell you two things. One, this is the difference between being the author of the book and not being the author of the book, because I would describe my experience in airports, which I've been in a lot in the last 2 months, as looking for my book and never finding it.
I'll start texting you when I see it.
I wish you would.
Because it's everywhere between here and Portland.
I wish you would, but... no, I never nudge a Hudson bookseller, but just last night I was walking around Brooklyn with a friend of mine, and we went to a couple of different bars, and I gave him a copy of my book, and he put it on the bar. And 3 separate times in 3 separate bars, somebody started commenting on the book, and like, "Hey, do you like that guy? What's it?" Not recognizing that I was that guy,
Oh, did that fill you with anxiety?
Extreme anxiety, yeah, extreme anxiety. It could have gone horrendously. It went perfectly.
That's
well.
like when someone doesn't hang the cell phone up after they've been talking to you.
Yeah.
We were having a Livewire staff meeting once, and one of the people on the show put their phone in their pocket and didn't know it was still going, and everybody else said, "We got to hang up right now."
I once butt dialed from my shrink's office. Yeah, so that's as bad as it gets. You know?
Yeah. Stuff for the next book from Jonathan Safran Foer. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on
Thank
Livewire,
you.
man.
Thank you.